Hi, this is Saud Masud, and welcome to the very first episode of the Saud Masud Podcast, where we share, learn, and grow together. Look, I must admit, I'm a bit nervous and excited today since I'm rolling out this first episode, and it's been in the pipeline for a long time. And I don't care if there's a bird chirping in the background or somebody just walks in through the door this time. We've done a million takes already, but this time we're going to contain the chaos and we're going to get through this and we're going to have fun doing it. So, with that, let's get going. In this episode, I'm just going to share with you who I am, what my motivations are for this podcast, and then what to expect from future episodes. So with that, who am I? As I said, my name is Saud Masud. I am a father to an amazing boy. I am a management consultant by profession, but I'm also multi-passionate. I teach business and personal development courses at various universities. I write articles on business and personal development topics. I mentor young students and entrepreneurs. And finally, and this is the most fun part of my life right now, which is I get to be a tennis and a cricket coach to kids on the weekend especially. So I am truly, truly grateful for the life that I have. And I'm also grateful for the life that I've had, especially when I look back over the last 2 decades. I had the privilege to have worked and lived all over the world, in the US, the Middle East, and now back in Pakistan, which is my home country. I've had the honor to work with mentors and friends in multinational firms. I worked on Wall Street and in Silicon Valley. And I share this with all the humility and purpose and not trying to impress anybody in any way. The point that I'm trying to make is that when one gets exposed to such a diverse set of challenges and experiences, you can't help but learn firsthand what are the patterns of success and failures. You learn personal development tactics and strategies. You learn how to be resilient. You learn what real leadership is like in the workplace and in personal life. And you learn by making mistakes. So there is a lot that I believe I can offer to others and help them in their journey, because not everybody has to go through all the mistakes to get to a certain level of success. But it's not just about my experiences. I am going to be 41 in less than a month now. And in my phase, this phase of life, I feel that I'm even more obsessed with self-discovery and self-improvement. And the more I look at myself and I'm saying, I'm a real work in progress. So what do? I read a lot of books. And in these books, I search wisdom nuggets from several mentors on the shelf, if you will. They not only teach me things that reinforce my past experiences, but also help me refine the lessons that I'm seeking, help me refine the approach to living a more fulfilling life, how to manage stress better, and most importantly, in my opinion at least, how to have real sustainable impact on the world around you. Now, we all want a better life. We all want a better world. But how many of us are really willing to jump into it and do something about it? We want better outcomes for our families, but we have to work towards it. And with that mantra in mind, I've jumped into doing this podcast. I want to be able to contribute tangibly and meaningfully. And one thing that I've learned that I wanted to share in this podcast is that I found that we typically severely underestimate impact. So I don't know what impact is to you, but to me, impact was something that had to be done at a massive scale through an institution, perhaps government intervention. And yes, that is one definition of impact. But what I realized was that we as individuals can have very powerful, meaningful, deliberate impact as well. So I'll give you perhaps a couple of examples. There was a student in my class, I think it's about a year and a half ago or so. And when I met him, he was extremely shy, extremely unsure of himself, wouldn't talk in class at all. And there was 70 students out there, so he wouldn't raise his hands. He would sit in the front, but he wouldn't say a word throughout the semester. So as the semester was winding down, he one day he followed me to the parking lot. I was leaving, And he stood there and he just kind of poured his heart out, and we had a very real conversation. His concerns in life was that he felt like he was decaying. This was the word that he was using. I am decaying. I don't know what to do with my life. I have no confidence. I don't know what to do. Every decision I make, I have to think about it 20 times. There are people who are snubbing me. There are people who are just discounting everything I have to say. How do I stand up for myself? How do I make more money? I'm not even getting interviews. This is the second or probably the third degree that he was going for. Because every time he would get a degree and he would go to the job market, there isn't no job. He would go back to school and take on another degree. So we had a very open conversation, and I just kind of opened the world of possibilities for him. I talked to him about my own struggle with communication and shyness and things like that. And long story short, I'll fast forward to 6 months. I met him again. He had graduated from the MBA program, and he came to me and he said, you know what, I'm so thrilled. I started this little street vending operation, and now I'm making essentially the same amount of money as my dad's pension. And it wasn't about the money. It was more about self-belief and self-respect. And when that happened, it just kind of shook me a little bit. I didn't realize that a real conversation could have this much of an impact. I'll share with you another example. So a few years back, I was conducting a workshop for female artisans. And I was walking them through how to use e-commerce, WhatsApp, Facebook, and all these other tools to their advantage, how to look up prices, how to reach out to customers, how to share information with each other. And they had never really been exposed to these technologies before. But in this process, one of these ladies, she kind of came to tears. She was upset because when she found out how much the middleman was scavenging off of her profits, the profits of the products that she was selling, she felt like she was taken advantage of. And she got over it pretty quick. The next day, the follow-up day, she came back and she understood that this is what the world would do to you if you are at an information disadvantage. But now she was empowered to bypass him. And she felt strong, and I didn't realize that such a simple workshop would turn into potentially a life transformative exercise. And this was less about money, and it was more about dignity and awareness. So this goes back to what I was trying to say to you before, that it's about impact. And we sometimes discount the impact we can have on other people's life. So instead of discounting it, we just need to just do it. We just got to do it and let the chips fall where they may. If the impact is huge, fantastic. If it's small, still better than nothing. I believe, when you see the spark, I wish I could let everybody experience that, because when you see the spark go off in someone, it's truly magical. It still gives me goosebumps thinking about these two examples now. And I find that these experiences have been extremely, I would say, overwhelmingly rewarding for me. And now I want to seek more of them. I want to be able to scale them, hopefully. And hence this podcast. Well, now you know who I am and why I'm motivated to do this, and I can talk about this for hours. But as I promised to you, let's just wrap up this podcast with the final section, which is about what to expect from future episodes. So I thought a lot about this, and I said, what are some of the topics that we want to cover? Personal development is a vast field, right? But then you throw in impact, and how do you impact others? And it just kind of keeps growing from there. It's kind of limitless in many ways. But what I want to do is I want to cover 5 main categories. The first category I want to cover is designing a life with purpose. If you think about it, if you design anything and you design it the wrong way, if the design fails, everything else that follows fails. So what we'll cover is, how are you designing your habits, the routines? How mindful are you about your health? How do you communicate? How are you raising your children? What kind of mindset have you designed? Is it a growth mindset? Is it a fixed mindset? How are you designing your financial goals? And then in general, what are your life goals? So design is the key component of personal development, in my opinion, and we'll focus a big chunk on that. The second part is, as I said, I love reading these books. It's not just personal development books, it's also biographies, autobiographies, and you learn so much from others' experiences. But I will be reviewing these books and I will try to extract tools, techniques, and all these potent messages that these books carry in them. And I'll share with the audience so you can live a more productive and a more healthy life. So it's, like I said earlier, it's not just about me and my past experiences. It's also leveraging what's out there and what the world is telling us and how to bring all of that, compress all of that vast knowledge to actionable points for the audience of this podcast. The third category that I want to talk about is to be able to bring in key subject matter experts and mentors on various topics. You know, what I call them is persons of value. These are people who can teach us something. They've lived a life a little bit differently enough, and they're generous enough with their time that they're willing to share their wisdom and their knowledge with us. So I'm all ears to everyone who wants to participate and contribute, and we'll pick and choose who is best suited to address a certain topic at a certain point during this podcast. Fourth, I will share advice on how to start your business. And the reason I bring this up is because so many of my students and young professionals that I mentor struggle with not only just finding a job, but also having enough cash flow to get through. I think the world that we live in today is not just about the gig economy or having flexible lifestyles, but it's also about having multiple revenue streams. So if you're counting on your job to be there for the next 50 years, that's not a very smart expectation. Things in the economic universe are very fluid nowadays. There are trends that I'm going to talk about, the technological trends that are going to be affecting jobs today, and many of these jobs may not be around tomorrow. So how do you build, and again, goes back to the design part, how do you design a life that helps you be financially more secure? And my solution to that is start your own business. Doesn't matter, even if it's a micro business, it may be enough to pay off the bills, so you can then go and focus on, building your empire, if you will. Fifth, and finally, I want to talk about intolerance and how we can play our part in creating a more peaceful and accepting world. I don't want my son growing up in an air of hatred and intolerance. The world we're living in nowadays is becoming increasingly polarizing. We're putting up more walls, we are fueling us versus them. But the good news in all of this is, which I believe, because I deal with young folks a lot, is that the youth is more receptive to peace and connection rather than perhaps the older generation. So I will do my part to push this narrative, to promote this narrative of having tolerance, acceptance, believing in the rights of others, and so on and so forth. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will conclude this first episode. Quite frankly, just recording this podcast and talking it out has made me feel alive and rejuvenated. It was a lot of fun. I intend to test this podcast frequency by publishing perhaps maybe once a week initially, and see if I can allocate more bandwidth down the line with everything else that's going on in my life. But again, it was fun. And I thank you for being the reason for why I'm doing this podcast. I also thank you for honoring me and lending me your ear today. Speak to you soon.